Okay, so we begin a new Peirik on Daf Lamed Vav Amud Beis, the Peirik of Kira. So this Peirik will discuss, the first part of the Peirik will discuss two basic halachas of Shehiyah and Chazara. As we'll see right here in the Mishnah, let's begin inside and I'll explain it as we go along. Zok the Mishnah, Kira she'sikuah, an oven that was heated. So now, when it says here in the Mishnah Kira, Rashi explains what a Kira is. In those times, the Kira, the opening of an oven was on the top, not on a door on the side, like we have today. It was basically this very large pot that had coals of fire at the bottom, and you placed a pot or food inside of it from the top. That's where the opening was. Now, the kira specifically is an oven that's large enough to hold two pots in it. We'll learn later in the Mishnah, on Daf Lamed Ches, there's a kupach, which could only hold one pot, and then there's a tanur, which is a cone-shaped oven. Now, both a kupach and a tanur have different halachas than a kira. They are both hotter than a kira. Because a kira is larger, it could contain two pots, so it doesn't contain the heat as strongly, and therefore we have the halachas that it says in our Mishnah. We'll get later, we'll see that the halachas by a kupach and a tanur varies a little bit from what it says here. So regarding the kira, that could contain two pots, she'sikuah b'kashu b'gvava, it was heated with either straw or stubble, which are not really kinds of materials that are going to last. The fire is not going to last too long. So now, Naisnim Malel Tafshel, you may place before Shabbos on this oven food to remain there for Shabbos. Begefes ube'itzim, however, if it was heated with gefes, which Rashi here and the Gemara explains is the pulp that's left over either from sesames or from olives, and it's a very good material to be used for a fire, or weitzim, wood, then this is a proper fire, and it's a fire that's going to maintain the heat longer. Lo yitain, you're not allowed to place. So we'll see it really in the Gemara. There are two pshatim in what the words lo yitain mean. I'll say the simpler pshat that the Gemara will say. The simpler pshat is lo yitain, you're not allowed to place it on Friday afternoon on the fire, that it should remain on Shabbos. Ad sheyigroif, until you either shovel out, yigraf means you shovel out all the coals, means, or you cover the coals with ashes to cool down the fire of the coals. In both of these cases, when the person is either, this is what's called garof or katum, either when you shovel it out or cover it, the person is making it clear that he's not interested in having this fire and stoking the flames on Shabbos. So let me explain a few things over here. First of all, as we'll see in the Gemara, according to this pshat of the Mishnah that I just read now, this is what's called shehiyah. That's a term that you're going to have to get very familiar with, because we're going to repeat it again and again in the next few blot here. Shehiyah means when you place it on the fire before Shabbos, and shehiyah, you're leaving it there. You're going to leave it there for the duration of Shabbos or Friday night and so on, or in some time in Shabbos. That's one concept here. Now, the other concept over here is that the garof and katum, as we just learned. But the point here is that the person is showing that he's not interested in stoking the flames. Meaning, the issue with shehiyah, with placing something on the fire before Shabbos, he did no malacha. He placed it on the fire before Shabbos. But the issue is, and we had this already before, if anyone remembers, in the end of the first Peirik, it was discussed, Shema yechate b'gecholim, that if you leave that pot on the fire, so the person might stoke the coals to enlarge the flame. That was the teva of things back then. When you had coals, a person had to stoke the coals all the time to make sure that the coals don't become too cold. So therefore, Chachamim were geyser not to leave a pot on the fire if it's with a proper and strong material of gefes or eitzim, until you either shovel it out or cover it with ashes. Now there's a machlokes regarding this halacha. When you did shovel it out, it's garof or it's katum, or you covered it with ashes. Beishamai say chamin. Even then, you could only place hot water to leave it. It should be hot for Shabbos. Avoloi tafshel, but you can't place a pot of food to be on the fire for Shabbos. So Beishamai is geyser regarding a tafshil, even if it's garov and cotton, it's been shoveled out, it's been covered. Beishamai is still geyser. There are two pshatim here in Rashi. One pshat in Rashi is you still may come to stoke the flames, and the Rishonim explain because even after you shovel it out, it's possible that there's some leftovers of coals or flame in the fire in the oven that you still might stoke. Or another pshat in Rashi is mechzi kimavashal, that leaving it to cook on Shabbos, it looks like you're cooking this food on Shabbos. And they still say chamin v'tafshel. You're allowed, once it's garuf and kotum, you're allowed to leave on the fire in the oven both chamin, hot water to remain hot, and tafshel, and food in a pot also to be cooked on Shabbos. Either one. Now, according to this pshat that we're learning in the Mishnah, the Mishnah now turns to another halacha, and this is the halacha known as chazara. Chazara means to return something to the fire. You took something off the fire on Shabbos, you wanted to take some cholent from a cholent pot, and now you want to return it to the fire. You can take a pot off the fire from Shabbos, but under no conditions could you return it to the fire on Shabbos. And again, this is talking even in a case where it's garov v'kotum, because it's a continuation to the beginning of the Mishnah. So even if you have a blech or it's garov and kotum, the coals are shoveled away or covered with ashes, you can't ever return it to the fire on Shabbos. However, Beis Hillel say, af machzirin. If it's garov and kotum, you're allowed to return the pot to the fire on Shabbos. So according to this pshat, the first two parts of the Mishnah was discussing the halacha of shehiyah. The last case of the Mishnah, where it brought the machlekes of Beishamai and Beis Hillel, the second machlekes of Beishamai and Beis Hillel, that is, it's talking about the halacha of chazara, an argument whether you're allowed to return the pot to the fire on Shabbos. Of course, we paskin like Beis Hillel, that you're allowed to return to the pot to the oven on Shabbos, but as we'll see later in the Gemara, there are very specific conditions when exactly you're allowed to return the pot to the fire. Now, the Gemara is going to show that really there are two different ways how to learn this Mishnah. And before I go into the Gemara inside, this Gemara here is based on a machlekes that we had already mentioned before in the first Peirik, in the end of the first Peirik. This is a machlekes of Hananya and the Chachomim. And the machlekes is as follows. According to Hananya, once something is cooked, minimum amount of kemaychel ben drusoi, as much as this thief, Ben Drusai, would cook things and eat it, it's a machlekes. If you remember, we mentioned it then. According to Rashi, that it was cooked a third. According to the Rambam, it was cooked half. Once it's cooked that amount, you can leave this pot of the food on the fire on Shabbos, and there's no need for garuf and cotton. You don't have to shovel out or cover the ashes, because it's already cooked partially, and therefore there's no chashash that the person is going to stoke the coals. On the other hand, the Chachamim say not until the food is fully cooked are you allowed to leave it on the fire. If it's not fully cooked, so then it has to be garuf and cotton. So now the question of the Gemara is going to be our Mishnah over here. Whose opinion does it follow? Hananya or the Chachamim? Let's see inside. The question was asked, Hi lo yitain, when it says in the Mishnah, do not place this pot on the fire. What is it speaking about? Is the pshat lo yachzer? We're actually speaking about on Shabbos. You remove the pot from the fire, and now when the Mishnah says lo yitain, not like the pshat when I read the Mishnah, but lo yitain means lo yachzer. Do not return the pot to the fire on Shabbos. That's what this Mishnah is speaking about. So right from the beginning, the Mishnah is speaking about the din of chazara, not the din of shehiyah. Aval lishais, but a pot that you placed on the fire on Friday afternoon and you want to leave it for Shabbos, mashin, you can leave it there. Even if you didn't shovel or cover the ashes. Mani, and if we're going to learn this pshat, who is our Mishnah going according to? Chananya. The Mishnah goes according to the opinion of Chananya. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braisa, mentioned already earlier, Chananya oimer kol shehu kemaychel ben drusoi. Once a food is cooked a third or a half, so then you're allowed to leave that food on the fire for Shabbos, even without shoveling or covering the ashes. So therefore our Mishnah is talking only about the halacha of chazara. Chazara is more stringent than shehiyah. When it comes to shehiyah, Hananya says, as long as it's cooked a third or a half, it's already mutter to keep it on the fire without Garav or Kotum. When it comes to Chazara, we're more stringent, and it has to be Garav or Kotum if you want to return it to the fire. And the reason why it's more stringent regarding Chazara is because, as the Rishonim say, when it comes to Shehiyah, leaving the pot on the fire, our main chashash is Shema Yechata. He might stoke the coals. Once it's cooked, K'maychel ben Dresoi, according to Hananya, we're not choshish that he's going to stoke the coals. You can eat it the way it is, really. It's right to eat b'di'evet the way it is. Masha'enkein, when it comes to Chazara, there's another issue. By Chazara, the Rishonim, the Alter Rebbe brings us a Shulchan Aruch as well, the issue is nire k'mevashal. Placing a pot back on the fire on Shabbos, even though you took it off and you just temporarily and you're putting it back, nevertheless, there's the issue of nire k'mevashal, so you're not allowed to put it directly on the fire, only if it's Garif and Cotton. This is one pshat in the Mishnah, according to Hanani's opinion. Or perhaps Lishais Tnan, the pshat in the Mishnah when it says Lo Yite, and it's talking about on Friday. He wants to place it before Shabbos to leave it there, to be shoya, to leave it there for Shabbos. V'i Garav Kotum in. If it's Garav and Kotum, you're allowed to leave it on the fire. Eloi, and if not, you're not allowed to leave it on the fire. And this is following the opinion of the Chachamim that not unless the food is fully cooked, are you allowed to leave it on the fire? And since here the Mishnah is talking about food that's not fully cooked, so therefore it has to be Garav Kotum. The Kol Shekain Lahachser. If it has to be Garav Kotum to leave it on the fire, for sure Lahachser, which as I just explained, is more Chomor than Shehiyah. So those are the two ways how to learn our Mishnah here. So now the Gemara is going to go through the Mishnah and analyze to see how we would interpret this Mishnah according to both of these Eifanim. So let's go back a second. In the Mishnah, there were three parts to the Mishnah. There's the first part, where it says the halacha of Garif and Kotum. There's the second part, where it brings a machlekes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, whether Garif and Kotum works even for cooked foods in a pot, or only for chamen, for hot water, like Beis Shammai's opinion. And then there's the third part of the Mishnah, which it talks about machzirin, where it talks about returning the pot to the fire on Shabbos. So now the Gemara will analyze the three parts of the Mishnah. How would I learn it according to both of these tzdadim, both of these ways that we just had of learning our Mishnah? Tashema, now take a look in our Mishnah. Midiktani trei bavi, it says in our Mishnah twice, two different arguments, b'masnisin, there are two different arguments in our Mishnah. The first argument was Beis Shammai says only hot water and not food in a pot. Beis Hillel says no, both hot water and food cooked in a pot, both of them. That was the first machlekes. Second machlekes, Beis Shammai you can't return the pot to the fire on Shabbos. So Beis Hillel says you could return the pot to the fire on Shabbos. So now the Gemara says as follows. If we're going to learn that the beginning of the Mishnah, it begins with the halacha of placing the pot on the fire to leave it there for Shabbos. So then, hachikatani, this is how our Mishnah will work, and it makes perfect sense. The Mishnah starts off with kira she'esikua bekasha begvava. If you're using kasha gvava, which is straw or stubble, which are very, very ein by mamish, it doesn't really burn long the fire. Mashnaleh, you could leave the pot on that. We're not worried you're going to stoke the coals. Then mashnaleh tafshul. Begefes ube'eitzim, but if you have gefes and eitzim, which is a bigger fire of coals, lo yisha achi yigroif or achi yitin efer. So even for shehiyah, to be allowed to leave it there, it has to be Garav or Kotum, has to be covered or removed the coals. And then comes the first argument of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Uma hein mashin, the first argument regarding the halacha of shehiyah. What could you leave on the fire when it's Garav and Kotum? Beis Shammai yomrim chamen avalei tafshul. Beis Shammai says only hot water and not a tafshul. And Beis Hillel yomrim chamen v'tafshul. And Beis Hillel says no, once it's Garav and Kotum, you can leave there both chamen and tafshul. That's the first two parts of the Mishnah, talking about the din of shehiyah and bringing a machlekes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel regarding shehiyah. Then comes the last part of the Mishnah, the third case, just as they argue regarding the halacha of shehiyah, what is allowed to be kept on the fire if it's Garav and Kotum. Pligi nami b'lahachzer. Now there's another machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel regarding returning the pot to the fire. You can take the pot off the fire, but you may not return it. Beis Hillel says you also may return the pot to the fire on Shabbos. So the Mishnah makes perfect sense. But now, if you're going to say that right at the beginning of the Mishnah, it starts off lo yitain, it means do not return the pot to the fire on Shabbos. So then hachikatani. Then the pshat of the Mishnah would be as follows: if you're using straw stubble, you could return the pot. If you're using gefes or wood, then lo yachzer, you should not return the pot. So right at the beginning, we're talking about the halach of chazara. And now, if so, the first argument of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is also going to be about chazara. What are you allowed to return to the fire? Beis Shammai yomrim chamen, only hot water. Avaloi tafshel, but not food in a pot. Beis Hillel yomrim chamen. You can return both chamen and tafshel. So the first argument of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel was about the halach of chazara, returning it to the fire. Then comes the second machlokes. Beis Shammai yomrim noitlin avaloi machzirin. You can take off the fire, but you can't return. And Beis Hillel yomrim af machzirin, and Beis Hillel says you could return hasul lamali. Why are they arguing a second time about chazara? They argued already the first time about chazara. So obviously the second time is a repetition. And when Beis Shammai the second time says loy machzirin, he's referring that is to a tafshel that he already said loy machzirin. So why are we saying the same machlokes twice? Hasulamali. Why do I have to say it again? That is the obvious question over here, according to the pshat that the Mishnah begins talking about chazara. So the Gemara answers la'olam eimalach. Truth is, no, I can tell you lahachzit nan. That in the Mishnah, right from the beginning, when it says lo yitain, it starts with the halacha of chazara. It's referring to returning the pot to the fire on Shabbos. And the chesuri mechsere, there are words missing in the Mishnah, v'hachi, ketani, and this is how I have to learn the Mishnah. Now, Taisus here points out that this is a bit unusual. Why would we make a chesuri mechsere if our Mishnah could fit perfectly according to the Chachamim? And we're trying to make our Mishnah fit with Chananya, which seems to be the minority opinion. Why would we do that? So Taisus says the reason is because we paskin like Chananya. As we'll see later, we'll see in Amud Beis that there's a Stam Mishnah seemingly before that's like Chananya because we paskin like Chananya. So the Gemara wants to fit our Mishnah with Chananya, even if it has to add words to the Mishnah. So if our Mishnah goes according to Chananya, hachi ketani. This is how we'll learn our Mishnah. Kira shesikua bekasha begvava. If you heated it with straw or stubble, machzirin aleh tafsh. You could return the food that you took off the fire on Shabbos. There's no chash that it doesn't look like you're cooking on Shabbos because the fire doesn't last with that. However, if you're using the pulp of sesame or olives, or eitzim or wood, lo yachzer, you may not return it on Shabbos, unless you shovel it out or you cover the coals. Okay, till here's how we learned the first part of the Mishnah. Now the Gemara adds a few words in the Mishnah that did not say. Avalishos, but to keep the pot on the fire from before Shabbos and to keep it on Shabbos, mashin, you can keep it on the fire, afal pisha eina gorav eina kotam, even if it's not shoveled or if it's not covered. And this is following the opinion of Chananya that since it's cooked k'maichel ben drusoi, so therefore you're allowed to keep it on the fire without gorav and kotam. Then the first machlokes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel is uma hein mashin. What could you keep on the fire if it's not gorav? It is invalid. If it's not gorav and kotum, Beis Shammai yomrim chamen. Beis Shammai says that you could only keep hot water. Avaloi tafshel, but not food in a pot. Beis Hillel yomrim, and Beis Hillel say chamen vit tafshel. Once it's cooked k'maichel ben drusoi, you can keep either on the fire without gorav and kotum. That's the first machlokes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So they were arguing regarding shehiyah, in a case where it's not gorav and kotum, because we added a few words in the Mishnah, right? We added those words in the Mishnah, aval lishos mashin, without gorav and kotum. Now comes the second machlokes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and it returns to the halacha of chazara. Chazara, the Amrilach, the halacha of Chazara that we said that you could only return it to the fire if it's Garif and Kotum, Lav Divrei HaKoili. Not everybody agrees to this. Ella, Machlaikis, Beishamai, Ubeisilol. This is really a Machlaikis between Beishamai and Beisilol. She Beishamai Oimrim, Neitlen, V'loi Machzirin. Beishamai say that you can take it off, but you may not return it, even if it's Garif and Kotum. Ubeisilol Oimrim, Af Machzirin. Beisilol say you could return it to the fire on Shabbos. So, the Gemara over here made a Chasuri Mechsere. We're going to add, in the beginning of the Mishnah, those words, what are they again? Avol lishais mashin. That even though the Mishnah was talking about chazara for the requirement of garif and kotum, but you add those words lishais mashin that you could keep the pot on the fire without garif and kotum, because this is Hananiah's opinion. It's already cooked k'maichel ben dresoi. That's good enough. Okay, and then we have the first pshat in the Mishnah, which is the simpler pshat in the Mishnah, that k'maichel ben dresoi is not good enough. It has to be fully cooked, and since it's not fully cooked, so therefore you need it to be garuf v'kotum in order to be shaya, in order to leave the pot on the fire from before Shabbos. So the Gemara now is going to bring rayas to this shaila, how to learn pshat in the Mishnah. Toshama, the first raya is the Amar Rab Chalbe, Amar Rab Chama Bagori Amar Rav. So he said regarding our Mishnah, Lo Yishanu, our Mishnah wasn't said Elo al Gabo, only if he placed the pot on top of the kira. In other words, he placed it on the rim or on a cover on top of the kira, but not inside the kira. Aval toicha, but if he placed the pot inside the kira, aser, then it's forbidden. So the Gemara now will explain: does this work? This pshat, does it work according to if we learn the Mishnah like Hananiah, or if the Mishnah goes according to the Chachamim? So let's see. Now, if it's going to be good understood, if you're going to say lahachzer tanan, that the Mishnah says the requirement of garuf and kotum is if you want to return the pot. So Rashi adds, but lishois, if you want to leave the pot there for Shabbos, there's no garuf and kotum. It's already cooked k'maichel ben dresoi. There's no need for garuf and kotum. So since there are coals inside the oven, if it's lishais, there are still coals there. Therefore, there's a big difference if you're placing it inside or you're placing it on top. If it's on top, it's not inside the coals that are there. So that's allowed. But if you place it inside, in the coals, so Rashi says you're insulating it inside the coals, that's not allowed. So that would be understood why we're distinguishing between inside or on the top. But if you're going to say that the Mishnah is speaking about shehiyah, and what's the Mishnah saying? That in order to be allowed to keep it there, it has to be garuf v'kotum. So the Mishnah is saying that all the coals or ashes have either been shoveled out or totally covered. Mali toicha mali al gaba. What difference does it make if it's on top or it's on the inside? The coals are shoveled out or it's totally covered. So what difference does it make? So therefore, l'chayda is a raya that our Mishnah follows Hananiah's opinion, that once it's cooked k'maichel ben dresoi, you can place the pot there without garuf and kotum. And therefore we're making a distinction between on top or inside. So the Gemara answers, no, we could explain differently. Mi savras Rab Chalboi areisha koi. Do you think Rab Chalboi was speaking about the reisha of the Mishnah? Aseifa koi. He was going on the last case of the Mishnah, which was speaking about chazara, the machlokes between Beishamai and Beisilol regarding chazara. Beisilol says you're allowed to return the pot to the oven on Shabbos. So on that, you're only allowed to return it if you're placing it on top of the oven. Again, whether on the rim or on a cover on top of the oven. But if you place it inside the oven, then it's asur, because it mamish looks like you're cooking on Shabbos and you're not allowed to place it all the way inside. So there's no raya from this statement, because Rab Chalboi was talking about the Seifer, and the shaila we had in the pshat of the Mishnah was regarding the Reisha. Now the Gemara brings another braisa that discusses the same halacha as our Mishnah, and it brings two opinions, Rab Meir and Rab Yehuda, and the Gemara will go through whether this braisa could fit with our Mishnah, and according to both interpretations of our Mishnah. Toshema, we learned in a braisa as follows. So the braisa first begins with the following halacha. Beis kirais hamasimais, when you have two kirais, one right next to the other, achas grufo ktuma, one of the ovens is garuf and kotum, v'achas she'ena grufa v'ena ktuma, and the other one is not garuf and kotum. Mashin agabe grufa ktuma. So this brayse is clearly talking about mashin. It doesn't say yitain, so it's clearly talking about mashin, and it says you're allowed to keep the pot there for Shabbos only if it's garif and kotum. But ve'ein mashin al she'ena grufa ve'ena ktuma. But you may not keep it there if it's not garif and kotum. Then the brayse goes on and brings the two arguments of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel that we had in our Mishnah, but it brings it with a much greater stringency, different than it said in our Mishnah. Uma hein mashin. What are you allowed to keep on the fire if it's garuf and kotum? So Beis Shammai actually say v'loi klum. Even if it's garuf and kotum, nothing. Right? In our Mishnah it said that chamen Beis Shammai allows. Here it says v'loi klum. Beis Shammai says nothing. Beis Hillel oimrim, and Beis Hillel says chamen avaloi tafshin. Avaloi tafshel. You're allowed to keep only hot water and not tafshel. Again, different than what it said in our Mishnah. Now the next machlokes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Okar, if you took the pot off the fire on Shabbos and you want to return it, are you allowed to return it or not? So what does it say in this brayse? Divrei hakoil loy yachzer. There's no argument. Everybody holds you may not return it to the fire on Shabbos. Again, this is not like our Mishnah, because in our Mishnah it said Beis Hillel holds you're allowed to return it. Divrei Rabbi Meir. This is the way Rabbi Meir learned this machlekes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Rabbi Yehuda, however, Rabbi Yehuda argues and says, and here, if we look the way Rabbi Yehuda explains this, it will be exactly the same as our Mishnah. Beis Shammai Yomrim, Beis Shammai say, Chamin avaloi tafshel. When it's garuf and kotum, you can keep chamin there, hot water, but not food in a pot. Or Beis Hillel Yomrim and Beis Hillel say, Chamin vit tafshel. Now, regarding returning the pot to the fire, chazara, Beis Shammai yemrim neitlin avaloi machzirin, you may not return it, or Beis Hillel yemrim af machzirin, you may return it to the fire on Shabbos. Basically, like it said in our Mishnah. So now, the Gemara is going to go through the two ways we had to learn our Mishnah and see if this brayse could fit with our Mishnah. If you're going to say that our Mishnah was talking about Shehiyah, when it talked about the halacha of God of Ekotim, it was talking about Shehiyah just like here in the Braise. It was talking about Shehiyah. So then, Masnisin Mani, who's our Mishnah going to go according to? Rabbi Yehudi. It fits perfectly with the second opinion in this Braise with Rabbi Yehuda. And not Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is more machmer. But if you're going to say that our Mishnah is only talking about lahachzer, only then do you require garuf and kotum. But to leave the pot on the fire, you don't need garuf and kotum at all. So then masnisin mani. Who would our Mishnah go according to? Lei Rabbi Yehuda, v'lei Rabbi Meir. Not like Rabbi Yehuda and not like Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir obviously cannot go according to Rabbi Meir, because then kashya leBeis Shammai b'choda. Because then there's going to be a question that what it says in our Mishnah does not fit with Beis Shammai in one case. Regarding the case of Shehiyah. What did it say in our Mishnah regarding the case of Shehiyah? Beis Shammai allows chamin and not tafshel. In this brayse it says Beis Shammai doesn't allow not chamin and not tafshel. And that's even in a case where it's garuf and kotum. In our Mishnah it wasn't garuf and kotum. And even in a case of garuf and kotum, he does not allow not chamin and not tafshel. So in that, it's for sure not like Beis Shammai in that one case. And also, ule Beis Hillel betarti. It's going to come out, Rab Meir's opinion is different, how he understood Beis Hillel than the way Beis Hillel is quoted in our Mishnah in two cases. Both regarding Shehiyah and Chazara. Regarding Shehiyah, in our Mishnah it said that Beis Hillel holds that you could do Shehiyah for both, Chamen and Tafshel, even if it's not Garif and Kotum. Here Beis Hillel allows Shehiyah only for Chamen and not for Tafshel. And in the second case of our Mishnah regarding Chazara, in our Mishnah it says Beis Hillel allows Chazara. Over here, Rab Meir is saying, L'kulam you can't do Chazara. So our Mishnah is for sure not following Rab Meir's opinion in this brayse. That's clear. Now, Rabbi Yehuda, if you're going to say that our Mishnah goes according to Rabbi Yehuda, which seems to be the exact same as our Mishnah, but it's still going to be a problem. Kashye, Grufo, Ktuma. But the question is going to be, if you're saying that in our Mishnah, when it said Lo Yitain, it's only talking about Chazara, but for Shehiyah, you don't need Grufo, Ktuma. In this Braise, it clearly said that you're not allowed to be She'ein Mashin agabi Grufo, Ktuma, ve'ein Mashla She'ein Grufo, ve'ein Ktuma. This Braise clearly says that the need of Grufo and Ktuma is also for Shehiyah. So how is it going to fit in our Mishnah? And for the Gemara, la'olam eimolach, really what I'll say to you is, lahachzer tanan, our Mishnah, we could read it lahachzer, and for shehiyah, we do not require grufa and ketuma. And you're right, the Tana of our Mishnah is not going to fit fully with Rabbi Yehuda, only partially. The Tana Didan, in the Tana of our Mishnah, Savalak Rabbi Yehuda b'chada, he will hold like Rabbi Yehuda regarding one aspect, but Upalagaleh b'chada, and he argues on Rabbi Yehuda with another aspect. Savalak Rabbi Yehuda b'chada, he holds like Rabbi Yehuda regarding one aspect, which is b'chamin v'tafshel, regarding how he learned the machlokes of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, regarding chamin and tafshel, and also regarding the noitlin and machzirin, how he learned the machlokes of noitlin and machzirin, that the Mishnah and the Braisa hold the same. But we can say that our Mishnah is arguing on the Braisa regarding another aspect. According to the Tana of our Mishnah, for Shehiyah you do not need God of a Katan. Again, because we're following Hananiah's opinion that once it's Kamachel ben Dersoi, it does not have to be God of a Katan. But Rabbi Yehuda Savar and Rabbi Yehuda holds Belishois Nami, even if you want to leave the pot on the fire, God of a Kotum in, Eloi Loi. It has to be God of a Kotum, and if not, you can't leave the pot on the fire. The fact that it's cooked, K'maichel ben Dersoi, does not help. So those are the two rayas the Gemara tried to bring, and we don't have any conclusive raya yet, whether we paskin like the Chachamim or whether we paskin like Hananiah. Let's see right in the Gemara. Now the Gemara turns to another ibaya, and this is lismach, smicha. You want to put something near the oven, not leave it on the oven or return it to the oven, but lismach. Mahu lismach. Now the question is, mahu lismach. Are you allowed to put the pot near the oven on Shabbos? So this could be in any of the cases here. It could either be in a case where it was already cooked k'maichel ben Dersoi, and it does not have to be God of a Kotum according to Hananiah, and you want to put it near the oven. Well, according to Hananiah, then you're allowed to actually even place it on the oven. But according to the Chachamim, that you're not allowed to place it on the oven when it's not fully cooked yet. So the question is, are you allowed to place it near the oven? Or for Chazara, everybody agrees it has to be God of a Kotum. So if it's not God of a Kotum, you can't put it back on the fire. So could you at least put it near the fire on Shabbos, near the oven? Only inside or on top, on the rim, that would be forbidden if it's not God of a Kotum and it's not fully cooked according to Chachamim, or if it's not cooked at all, or it's not cooked to Meichel ben Dersoi according to Hananiah. Avalismoich ba shapir dami, but to put it near the oven, maybe that's allowed. It's less heat. It's only near the oven. Like dilme loishna. Placing it in the oven, on the side of the oven, it's all the same thing, and there's no difference. Tashama, so the Gemara brings up Braisa, Shtei Kirais Hamasimas, going back actually to the Braisa that we quoted before. The Braisa there said, in the first part, you have two Kirais that are right near each other, Achaz Grufa Ktuma, Achaz Sheina Grufa Ktuma. One is Gorav and Kotum, and one is not. So what did it say there? Mashin Agabe Grufa Ktuma. You can leave a pot on top of an oven that is Gorav and Kotum, and it's right next to, so the Gemara now explains, Va'afal gav de kasolik le havla me'idach. If it's right next to another oven that's not Gorav and Kotum, it's getting the heat from the other oven. And still I allow you to put it on the oven which is Gorav and Kotum. So I see that to put it near an oven that's not Gorav and Kotum is okay. Okay, Afal gav de kasolik le havla me'idach. And for the Gemara, no. Dilme, Shani, Hassam, in that case it's different. The Kivin de Medallia, Shalat Ba'avira. Over here you have two ovens that are not right near each other. He's placing the pot, he's elevating it on top of one oven that's near another oven. That's not the regular case of Saimich. What we were talking about Saimich is to place a pot near the walls of another of an oven that's not God of a Kotum. That's the Shaila. Are you allowed? So therefore we can't bring a raya from this Braisa. Toshma, another case, Damarav Safra, Amarav Chiem, Tzerana Braisa, Kotma, if you cover the coals with ashes, then it's lapsa, and it flared up again. Same chala, you may put the pot near the oven, or mekaymen Allah, you may put it on the oven, v'noit lamimena, you can take off a pot, and return to it as well. So what do you see over here? Shmamina, from here you see, lismoich nami, even just to put it near the oven, kotma in, loy kotma loy, only because he covered the coals with ashes, therefore it's allowed, but if not, it's not allowed. Okay, so in other words, it puts in the same category, soymech, mekayim, and machzirin, it's all the same thing, so soymech has the same halacha, the same chumrah. And for the Gemara, all the time, according to your pshat, noitlin mimena dektani. When it mentions here noitlin, that you're allowed to take the pot off the fire, why does it mention that? Kotmein, like kotmaloi, you're only allowed to take it off the fire if the coals are covered and not if it's not. That's definitely not the case. You're always allowed to take a pot off the fire on Shabbos. Yeah, blech, no blech. To take off is never the problem. The problem is to leave it there, shehiyah or chazara, to return it to the fire. So why does it say over here something about noitlin? Ella, so what are you going to answer me? Tanen noitlin mishum achzirin. It only mentions noitlin because it wants to talk about the halacha, taking off and returning it. The main point is about returning it, that you're allowed to return it because it was covered already with the ashes. So if so, I could also say, it only mentions the case of putting it near the walls of the oven because of the case of mekaymen that you're putting it on the oven. But really, they're not the same. Mekaymen is where you have to have covering the coals, and not for smicha. Smicha is allowed even without covering the coals. So the Gemara rejects this. Hachi hashta. How could you compare? Hasam noitlin and machzirin bechad makimu. Noitlin and machzirin, you're removing it, you're returning it. It's one thing. You're removing it and returning it to the same place. So therefore it could say both, even though it really wasn't necessary. But it says it because it's the same place. So Tana noitlin mishum machzirin. Ella hacha, but over here, Saimchin b'chad makamu. Saimchin is a person that wants to put the pot near the walls of the oven. Or mekaymen b'chad makamu. And mekaymen is the person that wants to put a pot on top of the fire. It's two totally different cases. So therefore, why would the Tana mention Saimchin if it's not connected to the case of mekaymen? So shouldn't this be a proof that it has the same halacha as mekaymen? The Gemara doesn't accept it though, and the Gemara says, "My havi Allah." What's the answer to this question regarding smicha? Are you allowed to put a pot near the oven if it's not god of a kotum on Shabbos? Toshamas. The Gemara brings a pretty clear braysa. Kirish esikua begefes ubeitzim, oven that you heated up with gefes or eitzim. Soimchin la. You may put it near the walls of the oven. The aim mekaymin, but you're not allowed to put it on top of the oven or in the oven. Elam ken grufa ktuma, unless it's got it from cotton. Pretty clear. So it says the smicha from near the walls is not a problem. Gecholim sh'amamu. Then the Braisa says coals that were the fire is very small, it's extinguished coals. Oishenasan alem the oires shal pishtan daka, or you covered it with chaff of flax on top of it. Hareke ktuma. That's considered to be that it's covered. The coals are covered, and therefore that qualifies for Gaduf and Kotum. So this ends, this Shaila benegeh to Saimach, and that's the halacha. To be Saimach, you don't need Gaduf and Kotum. Okay. Now the Gemara turns to another Shaila, which is the halacha of Mitztamik v'yafe loy. What did we learn until here according to the Chachamim? That if it's fully cooked, then it does not have to be Gaduf and Kotum. If it's not fully cooked, we're afraid it's going to stoke the coals, it has to be Gaduf Kotum. But if it's fully cooked, it does not have to be Gaduf Kotum. But now the Gemara questions this. Even when something is fully cooked, there are two cases. There's a case where if you continue leaving it on the fire, it's only going to ruin the food. The more it cooks, it's going to get dry and the food is getting ruined. That's called mitztamik virale. The food condenses and it's not good for the food. Then there's a case where you leave it on the fire even after it's fully cooked, but it's mitztamik v'yafaloi. The food condenses and it actually gets better. It's tastier the longer you leave it on the fire. So the question is, according to the Chachamim that said that once it's fully cooked, it does not have to be cut of a kotum, does that include even a case of mitztamik v'yafaloi? Even if the longer you keep it on the fire, it gets geschmacker, the food gets better, tastier? Like a cholent, the longer you leave it on the fire, the tastier it gets. So let's see inside. If you cover the coals and it flared up again, you may leave on the fire hot water that was totally heated before Shabbos, and also food that was totally cooked before Shabbos. So this is obviously following the opinion of the Chachamim that it has to be totally cooked, and it's not following the opinion of Hananya that said only K'Michael ben Dresai. But now the Gemara says, Shma Mina. From here I can see mitztamik v'yafaloi mutter, that once it's fully cooked, even if continuing to leave it on the fire, it's going to be v'yafala, it's going to condense and it's going to get better, it's going to get tastier, still you're allowed to keep it on the fire. Because at this point, the way the Gemara is understanding this is, he covered the coals, but it flared up again. So once it flared up again, so then the coals are open. That's not covered anymore. And still, what does it say? That once it's fully cooked, you could leave it on the fire. So therefore, what is the chiddush of that? If it's fully cooked, what's the chiddush that you can keep it on the fire, according to the Chachamim? Even though leaving it on the fire, it's going to cook and it's going to get condensed and it's going to be v'yafalai, it's going to get tastier, still it doesn't matter. We're not afraid it's going to stoke the coals and you're allowed to leave it on the fire on Shabbos. So the Gemara says, no, there's no raya from here. Shani hacha de katma. Over here, he did originally cover the coals, and that's why it's permitted to keep it on the fire, even though leaving it there, it'll be mitztamek v'yafalai, it's going to become better, the food is going to become better. Frek the Gemara, but if that's the case, that he did cover it, and that's what we're relying on, so then what would be the chiddush? That's what the Gemara didn't want to accept, this pshat l'chatchila. What's the chiddush if you covered it? And for the Gemara, the chiddush is, huvara itztrichalei. The chiddush here is, it flared up again. So once it flared up again, it goes back to its initial status, and we say that whatever you covered was pointless, worthless. So therefore, this here Rav Aishia comes and tells us, once you covered it and you showed that you're not interested in stoking the coals on Shabbos, even if it flared up again, it doesn't matter. But according to what we said till here, mitztamik v'yafaloi will be a problem, even if it's fully cooked. But if it gets geschmacker, the longer it cooks, there's an issue. You have to cover the coals on Shabbos. Now the Gemara brings another statement from Rabbi Yochanan that said the same thing. You cover the coals and it flared up again. You can leave the fire on Shabbos. You can leave something that was cooked, water that was fully cooked on the fire, and and a pot of food that was fully cooked as well. And even this includes if you have coals that are made of reisam, which is a kind of wood that has a very strong source of heat. So again, the Gemara wants to say the same thing as before. Shmamina, what would be the chiddush here of this statement? Mitztamik v'yafaloi mutter. That although keeping it on the fire, it'll condense and the food will get better, more tasty, still it's permitted. That seems to be the chiddush here. So the Gemara says, no, that's not the chiddush. Shani hacha de kotma. Here, the reason it's allowed, even though the food gets tastier, to leave it on the fire, it's because it was already covered with ashes. What would be the chiddush if he taka covered it, and that's the reason why it's permitted? So what's the chiddush? And for the Gemara, like we said before, huvara itzrichalei. The chiddush here is, although it flared up again, still I say that it's permitted. Frek the Gemara. Hainu hach, isn't Rabbi Yochanan saying the exact same thing as Rav Aishia? Why did he repeat the same halacha? And for the Gemara, there's one detail he added. Gecholim shel reisim itzrichalei. The case of these coals that come from these very hot wood, that was his chiddush, that even such kind of coals is permitted even if it flares up again. That's a detail that Rav Aishia didn't mention before. Now the Gemara brings another Amayra, Rav Sheshes, that heard from Rabbi Yochanan differently. Rav Sheshes, Rav Yochanan, Kira Shesikua begefes ube'etzim, a oven that was heated up with gefes and eitzim, mashan aleh chamin, shaloi huchamu kol tzarkan. You may keep on it on Shabbos, even foods that was not cooked kol tzarkan. V'tafsha shaloi bishul kol tzarkai, and even foods that was not cooked kol tzarkai. Whose opinion is he following? Chananya. Even if it was cooked just k'maychel ben drusai, you can keep it on the fire without God of a kotum. Okar, once you removed it from the fire, lo yachze, you shouldn't return it. Ad sheyigrif ayat sheyitin efer. Then you have to have God of a kotum. For chazara, for shehiyah, he's paskening like Chananya. Kasavar, so that means he holds masnisin lahachzetnan. Our Mishnah, when it required God of and kotum, that's only to return it to the fire. Aval lishais, but to keep it on the fire, mashan aval b'sheina God of and kotum. You can leave it on the fire even if it's not God of a kotum, even if it's not fully cooked, again, because he's following Hananiah's opinion. As long as it's Kamaychel ben Drusai, you can keep it on the fire. This is the second version of what Rabbi Yochanan said. Now the Gemara adds to this, Omar Rave, Tarvayu Tanini. Both of these halachas, in this version of Rabbi Yochanan, we learned in a Mishnah. Lishais, this that he says that you're allowed to keep it on the fire without God of a kotum like Hananiah. Tanina, we learned in a Mishnah earlier. It said, this is in the first Pedic, you're not allowed to place bread to bake in the oven right before Shabbos, and not a biscuit on top of coals to bake, unless it crusts on the top. So the Gemara says, Hakarmu paneha, but if you put it early enough that it will crust, shari, it's allowed to put it in the oven. Now Rashi explains, when it crust, it's not fully baked. That's similar to Meichel ben Drusai. It's partially baked, and it's allowed. So we see over here, like Hananiah's opinion, if it's partially baked, you can put it in the fire without God of a cotton. So this is a Stam Mishnah that basically is following Hananiah's opinion. Then the Gemara says, the halacha of lahachse nami tanina, the halacha of lahachse we learned in the Mishnah that we just learned in the beginning of our Pedic here. Beis Hillel af machzirin. Beis Hillel says that you're allowed to return it to the fire, but va'at kan lekosher Beis Hillel ela begrufa kasharu Beis Hillel ela begrufa ktuma. When does Beis Hillel say you're allowed to return it only if it's got of a kotum? If not, you're not allowed. Frag the Gemara, if this is true, that both of these halachas I can see in the Mishnah, v'Rav Sheishes, Nami, the Yuke, the Masnisin, Kamashmalan. Even though it seems like he's saying something that it already says clearly in the Mishnah, Rav Sheishes is coming to tell me the diuk of the Mishnah. It didn't mamish say it beferish in the Mishnah regarding the bread. We will medayik that if it's karmu panel, it's allowed. He's coming to teach you the diuk. Rashi here says that this is the source of why many Rishonim paskin like Hananiah, because there's a Stam Mishnah that goes according to Hanani, even though he's the minority opinion. But this is an outstanding machlekes Rishonim. Many Rishonim paskin like Hananiah, many other Rishonim paskin like the Chachamim. Both days are brought in Shulchan Aruch. The Alter Rebbe also brings both days in Shulchan Aruch. The Alter Rebbe says that really the halacha is like Hananiah, that we're mekel. But if you can, you should be machmer like the Chachamim, that as long as it's not fully cooked, it should be God of a kotam, you should have a blech, you should have a covering. That's the halacha l'maisa that's brought in Shulchan Aruch. Now we have one more version for Rabbi Yechanan's opinion. Let's try to finish the Amud over here just a bit more. Amar Rav Shmuel by Yehuda, Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Kira she'esikua begefes ube'eitzim. If you heated it up with gefes and eitzim, mashna le tafshel shebishel kol tzarcha v'chamashuchim kol tzarkan. You're allowed to place on it something that was cooked fully. So this is following the Chacham's opinion, that it has to be fully cooked. Then he adds, va'afilip mitztamik v'yofel loy. Even if this is food that if you keep it on the fire, it gets tastier, still it doesn't matter. Once it's fully cooked, you don't need garif and kotum. Okay, this goes against what we said before, that even if it gets tastier, it has to be garif and kotum. Here, Rabbi Yechanan clearly, according to this version of Rabbi Yechanan, he clearly said that if it's even if it's mitztamik v'yofel loy, it doesn't matter, it's already fully cooked. So one of the Rabbanan said to Rav Shmuel by Yehuda that quoted this in the name of Rabbi Yechanan, but Harav Shmuel Damri Tavayu, didn't Rav and Shmuel both say mitztamik v'yofaloi aser? According to the Chachamim, what if it's still mitztamik v'yofaloi, even if it's fully cooked, but if it's going to get tastier, it's still a problem. You still have to have garlic and cotton. Amalei. So he responded and said, Atu lesana yada, you think I don't know this? The Amar of Yosef, Amar of Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, I know that it was said in the name of Shmuel, mitztamik v'yafalei aser, that if it gets tastier, then it's aser. I know this. Ki kamina loch, let Rabbi Yechanan kamina. I'm saying Rabbi Yechanan's opinion. He could argue with Rav and Shmuel. Amar Rav Ukva mi Mishon Rav Ashi, Rav Ukva of the city Mishon said to Rav Ashi, Aton the mekarvisu l'Rav and Shmuel, you that live closer to the area where Rav and Shmuel live, so then, Avidik Rav Shmuel, you have to follow like the opinion of Rav Shmuel that it's forbidden. Anan Navid Rav Yechanan. However, we are going to follow Rav Yechanan's opinion that even if it's mitztamik v'yafaloi, it's mutter because it's fully cooked. Amalei Abayla Rav Yosef. Now Abayah asked the question to Rav Yosef. Mahu lishois. What's the halacha? Are you allowed to be shoye on an oven that's not goruf and kotum in a case that it's mitztamik v'yafaloi? That's one shitta. Or maybe he was asking, do you paskin like the Chachamim or do you paskin like Hananiah? Amaleh, he answered, Rav Yehuda mashalev achol. We know that Rav Yehuda would leave the pot in the fire even if it wasn't God of a kotum and he would eat from it. Amaleh, so he answered, no, don't bring me a raya from Rav Yehuda. Bar mined Rav Yehuda. to put besides Rabbi Yehuda, the Kivin the Mesukin, who he was an individual that was in a matzav of sakana. Rashi explains he needed to have very sweet foods immediately available for him, and if not, it was a sakana. So therefore, he would technically be allowed to place it on the fire even on Shabbos. He was in a sakana. Leave a lochmai. I'm asking for me and you where it's not a sakana. What's the halacha? Amalei besura mashu. In surah they would leave it on the oven even if it's mitztamek v'yafaloi. The Rav Nachman by Yitzchak, Mari the Uvda Haver. Rav Nachman by Yitzchak was a Mari the Uvda. He was a master of his deeds. Rashi says he was medactic in his actions, and Umashile, and he would leave it on the fire. So therefore, we v'achal and he would eat it. Ravashi, and Ravashi said, Ke'imna kamei de Ravune, v'shan le kisse de harsene v'achal, and he left a kisse de harsene, which is kinds of fish that's cooked with flour, and he left it on the fire. And now he said as follows. Now I'm not sure why he left it on the fire once it was fully cooked. Is it because even though leaving it there made the food tastier, but still he holds it permitted? Maybe since this fish is mixed with flour, the longer you leave it on the fire, it condenses it and it actually ruins it, and therefore the person is not going to come to stoke the flames, and therefore it's permitted. Now the Gemara concludes, and this is the halacha. Amar Rav Nachman, according to the Chachamim, mitztamik v'yafaloi, if the food condenses and gets tastier, aser. You're not allowed to leave it on the fire without garif and kotum. Mitztamik v'raloi, if the food, you're leaving it on the fire, it doesn't get tastier, it gets worse, mutter. Then it's allowed to be left on the fire without garif and kotum. He's not going to come to stoke the coals. Klol of the milsa, and here's the rule. Kol dis bei miche, if it has flour in it, mitztamik v'raloi. Then the food, the longer you keep it on the fire, after it's cooked, it's going to get ruined. Labar mitavshel de lifta, besides lupins, the afagav de isbe micha, even though it's mixed with flour, mitztamik v'yafaloi. The longer you leave it on the fire, the better it becomes. V'hane mili de isbe bisra, but that's only if the lupins are mixed together with meat. Avalesbe bisra, if there's no meat there, mitztamik v'raloi. Then the food, the longer on the fire, it just gets dried up and it gets worse. Another detail where there's a distinction here, even if you have meat, and like we see in a cholent, the longer the meat cooks, the more tastier it becomes. But it's only if he doesn't want to serve the food for guests. And if he wants to serve the food for the guests, it's considered to be mitztamik veraloi, because with guests, he doesn't want to serve a condensed small piece of meat. He wants to show that he can serve generous, and he wants to have meat as much as possible. So therefore, if you leave it on the fire, he's not happy with it, and he's not going to stoke the coals. Now the Gemara says lifta, which is a food that's made out of figs, and daisa, some kind of cereal, also and vitamri and dates, all these things that are cooked on the fire. Once it's fully cooked, mitztamik veralehen. Leaving it on the fire will not do any good for it. Adarabe, it'll ruin the food. So this is the halacha lamaisa according to the Chachamim, has to be fully cooked and mitztamik veraloi in order not to need gar v'kotim. If it's not fully cooked, or even if it is fully cooked, but it's a mitztamik v'yafaloi, it gets tastier leaving it on the fire, we're still chayshish, you're going to stoke the flames, and therefore you have to cover it on Shabbos. This is the Chachamim's opinion. But then there's Hananiah's opinion. Hananiah says, as long as it's kamachal ben dersoi, you don't need any more blech, you don't need to cover it on Shabbos. So, as I mentioned, Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch brings both opinions, Hananiah and the Chachamim, and he says you can be maker like Hananiah, but lechatchila, you should be machma like the Chachamim. But as we'll see later in Mitzvah Shem and the Gemara, there's another reason for a blech. Or actually, we already saw it before in the Mishnah. The other reason for the blech is for chazara, if you want to be able to return it to the fire. For the halach of chazara, everybody agrees that you could only return it to the fire if you have a blech. So even if you have a cholent that's fully cooked before Shabbos, and it's there's no need for a blech, nevertheless, if you want to take the cholent off the fire and be able to return it, you're going to have a blech in order to chazara. That's a different purpose. Conditions. Yeah, and additional conditions, as we'll see later in the Gemara. Okay, thank you for indulging the additional few minutes to be able to finish for today. And in Mitzvah Shem tomorrow, we'll continue and maybe go a bit further ahead to be able to make up for the days that we won't be learning on Yom Tif. Have a very good Mayid, B'Sudas Tevis.